Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn. Welcome to my car. Today is a very exciting day. It is Tuesday, October 18th, and it is the release day for Colleen Hoover's newest book, It Starts With Us, and I am so excited to go get my hands on it. That's why I'm in the car right now. I've been working all morning, counting down the minutes until my lunch break so I can go and pick up a copy of It Starts With Us. So that's what I'm doing right now, but what I'm doing for this video is I thought it would be really fun to compare Colleen Hoover's newest book to her oldest book, because I have not read this book yet. It's called Slammed. It was released in 2012. I am on a mission to read all of Colleen Hoover's backlist. I've only got this series as well as the Maybe Someday series left. So I figured, why not tackle this series, make a fun little video comparing her newest book to her oldest book, and that way I can give you thoughts on this series as I read it, as well as It Starts With Us once I read that. So like I mentioned, Slammed is the first book in a series. The first book is called Slammed. Second book is called Point of Retreat, and the third book is called This Girl. None of my covers match. This first one is like matte. It's the old cover. This is the new cover, which is like a butterfly when you put all of the three covers together. I will eventually collect all of those, but not yet. And then this one is like a shiny version of the old cover. I don't know a lot about the plot of this book. I think all I know is that it's about a girl who falls in love with her slam poetry instructor. I've heard that's a little bit taboo, and I've also heard criticism that this book tries to tackle a lot. It sounds like Colleen Hoover for her first book just wanted to come out with a bang and throw everything that she can possibly throw into a book into this one. So I'll be honest that my expectations are a little bit low. I have read her Hopeless series, which is also one of her earlier book series, and I found that to be a little bit angsty with the romance. So I'm curious to see if this is similar to that in that way, or maybe I will be pleasantly surprised. So I am actually going to listen to this book today. It is on script and it's pretty short, so I'm going to fly through this. I will let you know my thoughts throughout the day as I read it. I'm going to pick up It Starts With Us, and I'm probably going to go right into that one before I finish the rest of the series, but again, we'll see what I think of the first book and how eager I am to get to the next two books in the series, but I don't know how long I can wait before reading It Starts With Us. I also did re-listen to It Ends With Us recently, so I have that story fresh in my mind. Okay, a truck just pulled up behind me, so I'm gonna stop this clip. I'm gonna go to the store and I will check in once I have that book in my possession. Okay, I am home now. I did get a hold of It Starts With Us, as you saw. Very excited. My bookstore gave me an It Starts With Us bookmark as well that has all of Colleen Hoover's books and series on it, which is actually kind of cool, especially as I've been trying to read her entire backlist. I also picked up, as you saw, Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. This is the newest book by the author who's written Little Fires Everywhere and what's her other one called again? Oh yeah, Everything I Never Told You. I also have started the audiobook for Slammed. I'm a little ways into it, and a little bit more about the synopsis to clear that up. This is about an 18-year-old girl whose family has just moved from Texas to Michigan. She meets her next door neighbor, and it's this 21-year-old boy. They get along really well. They end up going on a date. Within the first few days of her moving there, she doesn't think to ask him what he does for a job or anything. He doesn't think to ask her if she is still in high school because he knows she's 18. Turns out she is still in high school. She's a senior, and he is like a teacher's assistant or student teacher for one of her classes. So it's kind of like a student-teacher relationship. Not really, because he's still in college. He's just a student teacher, but it is still, of course, a little bit taboo because there is that age difference and that power differential caused by him being a student teacher and her a student. And he also does do slam poetry, so he's teaching a poetry class. I'm liking it so far. Honestly, I'm liking how the main guy isn't a total D-bag. Colleen Hoover's Hopeless series is all about like the good girl falling for the bad boy, and I definitely don't connect to that as much from a romance standpoint. I'm way more in favor of like friends to lovers or like the sweet love interest more than like the off-limits bad boy who kind of treats you badly. This guy Will is very nice, and their attraction and relationship started before they realized that they were in the situation that they're in. So I'm going to continue listening to this throughout the day, and then when I finish that, we will decide whether I'm going to start this next or read the rest of that series first. And I was going to say in the car before I got cut off, I did recently re-listen to It Ends With Us, which is the first book in this series. This is the sequel to that book. Knowing what this is about actually does spoil that first book, so I'm not going to say really anything about this book. I'll just tell you obviously how much I enjoy it. But It Ends With Us is one of my all-time favorite adult romances. Highly, highly recommend it. It is classic Colleen Hoover, so it's very emotional. It packs a lot in there. There are some potential triggers involved in the story, so recommend looking those up if you are at all worried about that. But I love that book, so I'm very excited to read the sequel. So I'm going to continue on with reading Slammed throughout today as much as possible. I do have to get back to working for the afternoon, but after that, hoping I will be able to knock out the rest of this book tonight. I'll let you know my thoughts, and I'll let you know my next plans for this video. Okay, weird angle. You are balanced precariously on my water cup. It is much later. Kids are home and asleep. My husband is going to sleep himself. I am waiting for some laundry, and I did want to check in because I finished Slam today. I listened to it all in one day. I wrote down some notes in my phone that looked like a lot of writing. I have some thoughts. I just wanted to get them all down. Overall, this was not as bad as I was expecting. I was honestly expecting the romance to be a lot cringier based on some of the other young adult books by Colleen Hoover that I've read, specifically the Hopeless series. The things that I liked about that book and that series were honestly not the romance. That book had some more like twisty, suspenseful elements in it that this book didn't have, and I think this book did the romance much better. Again, because I did really like the main love interest, and I think that made a big difference. I think the biggest problem people have with this is the trauma that's included, and I don't have an issue with the fact that trauma was in here and that so much and different types of trauma were all combined and included in here. The only thing that didn't quite work for me was that it was a little surface level and a little light in tone with how the characters reacted to said trauma. And it's hard for me to speak on this because I haven't gone through the same trauma that these characters have. So I can't say they didn't react correctly in the situation because I don't know what the correct way to react is. Also, everyone obviously reacts differently to every different type of situation, but especially traumatic situations. So it's hard to say people don't react correctly. I just don't think the gravity of some of the situations in here were addressed appropriately, especially for this being a young adult novel. I just feel like there needed to be a little bit more emphasis put on the fact that this is heavy trauma, these characters are going through a lot, etc. The other main issue I've seen people have with this book is the problematic element created by the fact that Will is kind of the teacher to Laken, even though they're 21 and 18 years old. And I can't really argue that because that is an imbalanced relationship just inherently. I don't know that that means a book can't be written about it, like the story still can't be told even if the author or the reader doesn't condone that type of relationship. It was challenged several times throughout this book by both of the main characters, by parents, by friends, so I don't think it was just passed over as like, yep, this is normal. So I guess that's a good thing. But also I do think you can keep in mind when books were written. For example, this was written in 2012 and Colleen Hoover herself has come out to say that she would change things in some of her past books that she now knows are problematic or that she no longer stands by or agrees with. And I don't know if this is specifically one of those, I don't remember. But I do know that Colleen Hoover continues to change and evolve as a person, as do all of us, and I think that should be allowed. And we shouldn't necessarily condemn an author for something they've done in the past if they're willing to say that they have made mistakes and wouldn't write the same thing today. So with all that being said, I am going to give this 3 stars. Not a new favorite, not a favorite Colleen Hoover. I think this falls pretty middle of the pack in terms of her books for me. But now that I've finished that, it is time to make a decision on whether I'm going to continue the Slammed series right away or if it's time to just dive right into It Starts With Us. And I think I'm just gonna dive right into It Starts With Us. I'm just too excited to read this book. Lots of my friends are reading it. It's release day. I just wanna start it. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to read It Starts With Us. I will let you know all of my thoughts on it. I will keep it spoiler free, of course. And then I will read the rest of the Slam series and put that at the end of this video for anyone who's not interested in the rest of that series. So that's the plan. I'm gonna get to reading and I will check in when I have some thoughts. Okay, update time, you guys. I have multiple updates. The first and most exciting is I did fly through It Starts With Us. I enjoyed it so much. It's very hard to talk about this book without spoiling the first one a little bit because some of the intrigue of It Ends With Us is finding out who the endgame couple is. And I know some people just come out and say who this book is about, but I personally feel like that's spoiling a little bit of that first book. So I'm not even going to talk about who this couple is. I'm just going to talk very vaguely about my feelings about this book and how it is as a sequel to that first book. So I will say that this is different from that first book because there is no mystery or no tension about like who is going to end up with who. This book is very much, I want to say, fan service. People asked for this book. They wanted a continuation of book one because they want to know, once you finally know who's ending up together, what does their life look like? So I definitely think you have to know that going into this book, that it's not the same conflict. So you have to get your attention elsewhere. And I will say that Colleen Hoover did a very good job of still making this not just a light and fluffy book. It's not just showing us the happily ever after. These characters are adults with some really difficult issues in their lives apart from their romance that they still have to deal with while trying to form a relationship, and it's so refreshing to see that played out. One of my favorite things is reading romances between full-grown adults who have responsibilities, who have issues and baggage and things to work through, and being able to work through them together, build off of each other's strengths. And we see that so clearly with both of these characters. They have things to work through, and I love watching them work through them together. This book did have a couple of what I would call spicy scenes, so those are not my favorite. I don't mind them being in there. They're just not something I seek out in romance books, but I did want to say that because I know a lot of people either really do like that or really don't like that in their romance books. So if you really don't, just be aware that they're in there a little bit. And really the only other thing I want to say about this book is that, well, first of all, I think a lot of people will again find things to relate to in this book because it does cover a lot of serious issues and none of us are without our own, trials and tribulations throughout life. But one of the things that I related to really hard in here was supposed to be kind of a comedic situation without going into too much detail. I will say it's an intimate scene that kind of goes awry because of breast milk. And that situation was hilarious to read, but super relatable as a mom who has breastfed and pumped. I know all about what that looks like and the inconveniences it can cause in many situations throughout the day. And I just love that Colleen Hoover can include that in a romance book. And I don't think it was awkward or anything. It was just super real. So I loved that. I still love Colleen Hoover. I am going to give this 4 stars because it didn't hit quite as hard as the first one. I didn't cry at any point in this book. That's not to say no one will cry. I have seen people already cry over this book. So to me, it doesn't live up to the first book completely, but for a sequel, and as a continuation of that first story, I thought it was extremely solid. So that was a pleasant surprise. Shifting gears a little bit, I did also finish This Girl, which is the second book in the Slammed series. And while I was pleasantly surprised by the first book in this series, I was disappointed in the second book. This felt like a very forced continuation of this story. I again think it was something that fans asked for, and Colleen Hoover wasn't necessarily intending to make this first book into a series, but people loved the first one so much they wanted to see the story continued. And I don't think this one had as much depth because these characters are not adults, and even though they do have serious things going on in their lives, it's just not the same as like this book. The character development is definitely different. Obviously Colleen Hoover has grown as an author, which I think is amazing, but reading this sequel right after this sequel was probably a disservice. Oh, whoops, I'm holding up the wrong book. I actually read Point of Retreat. This is the second one. This is the third one that I have not read yet. Anyway, it was a disservice to Point of Retreat. And without going too in depth to what this book is about, because again, it's a sequel, I don't want to spoil it. My overall thoughts are that it was very, very boring. And then Colleen Hoover threw a twist that felt random and didn't feel as emotional to me as I think she was intending it to feel. I don't know. I'm definitely just less invested in these characters and where the story is going. So I gave this one 2 stars. I will go ahead and read the third book before closing this video out just to round out my thoughts, but a disappointing sequel for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and read that third book, pop in with my overall thoughts on that series, and then I'll get this video posted so I can have my thoughts about It Starts With Us out into the world. Okay, hello everyone. Don't mind the fact that you can see directly into my bathroom behind me. I am sitting at my editing computer and want to finish up this video because I have finished this girl. I finished the third book in the Slammed series, and this is going to be a quick review because this is a 1-star book, which I almost never give out, but I truly do not understand the purpose of this book existing. This is the second time I've read a book in a series by Colleen Hoover where she writes a sequel or a book later in a series that is just a direct retelling of the first book from the other person's perspective. So this book is literally just Will, the guy, telling the whole story of the first book from his perspective to Lakin. And like they kind of try to twist it in like a flashback way where like they're talking in present day and she's like, tell me about that one time when we did this. So then he goes into his whole perspective on that situation. And it's just not interesting. I've already read these scenes. I already know how this all plays out. So there's no tension or anything. It's just them having the same conversations that I've already read. So I do not understand it. It just feels like fan service. I don't want to say a money grab because I don't think Colleen Hoover is just in this for the money. I know her story and how she got started, and also the fact that being an author is not lucrative in most cases. So saying that an author is writing a book as a money grab, as a general statement and in most circumstances, I think is inaccurate. But I guess what I can pull from this is that Colleen Hoover does often write sequels for books that fans are asking for. They want more about the couple. Maybe some people do want to be inside the head of the other person, but I think she's gotten better at actually developing a story throughout a series, and I hope that's the case moving forward for her. And Colleen Hoover is not the only person to do this. Midnight Sun is Twilight from Edward's perspective, so I know that there are other very popular series that have done this thing as well, and I really don't think it's the author's fault because readers are reading it, so I get it, but I don't get it if you're the type of reader who is asking for this. It's just pointless for me. I would way rather read a book with a brand new story or with a continuation of a good story rather than waste my time reading a story I've already heard. But anyway, with that, I am glad to have the Slammed series completed now. I have a better idea of where Colleen Hoover started as an author, and I am very excited to see where she continues going because I really enjoyed this book, and I even more so enjoy her standalone books, so I hope that she continues in that direction, keeps writing those. I will keep picking them up along with pretty much everyone else in the reader community, but we will see what's next from her. If you have read Colleen Hoover's books, please let me know which ones. Let me know what you think about them. Are you a super fan like me? Have you read or are you planning on picking up It Starts With Us? Or if you're not a fan of Colleen Hoover, I am totally accepting of you here. Let me know gently why you're not, but otherwise I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.